Look at how we can convert textures into poly-painted colors so that we can do a little bit of modification and then take those back out to textures. So we've got the sculpted detail in here, but let's say we now want to use those actual textures as a base for our poly paint. We'll go ahead and add that texture, make sure that your shaft is selected, and then we'll go down to texture, and let's go texture to color, or colors from texture. And that'll transfer the texture to an actual color. So now you can see that that's actually been added as a poly paint to our shaft. So what we can do now is go in and maybe select a dark color, and let's get kind of a freehand stroke, kind of a low intensity, and now we can start to detail just by painting on top of our what was our texture. So if we want to make this a little bit dirtier up here, go ahead and do that, make it a little bit dirtier along these cracks. Okay, I can add any sort of painted detail that I want. It's transferred that texture information into polygon colors. Now again, dependent on the resolution of your model. You want to have enough resolution in there to be able to maintain that sort of image quality. Okay, come in here and maybe around this crack, it's really kind of dirty in there, and just whatever kind of detail that you want to add. You could add some painted detail in here. Maybe it's got some, battle stripes painted on there or something like that, but you've got a great base to start from just by using that wood texture that we used, and it matches up with the sculpted detail as a bonus. So where the big crack is, that's where that sculpted detail is as well, and it all matches up nicely. Okay, so you come in and just kind of dirty everything up a bit, and then you could do whatever sort of detail you want to add to that. Alright, let's do the same thing on the handle. Okay, go ahead and add that metal texture back on, and we've got the handle selected. Let's go ahead and go texture to color, and now it adds that as a color on top of there. So from this point we can take, if we want to take kind of a blue color, we could go back and get our color spray and go over this. If we want to get kind of a low intensity, you can kind of start to, that's a little bit too low, start to go over this whole thing and just kind of create a little bit more of a metal look over the whole thing. And you could take a look at the head of the hammer if you want it to match up, or you could make it entirely different kind of look if you wanted to go for that. Okay, and beyond doing that, you could again go in and get a very dark color with maybe still a low intensity and a smaller brush, and come in and just darken up any of these cracks and crevices and just add a little bit of depth in there. Just by darkening some of these areas up, you can do that. Maybe some of these interior areas you can darken up a little bit, and just using your texture kind of add to the depth of this, and just come in here and just break it up a little bit. And again, this matches up with our sculpted detail, which is nice. Bring that across. Alright, so you can just really quickly get something that looks pretty good just by using that texture again as a base, and then you could modify the look of it on top of that. You want to come in up here and start to blend this all together. On this top part where we don't have any texture, you would just use the same technique that you used on the metal up at the top. So just alternate between kind of a lighter and a darker color here, and then you just kind of drop that in, and you can see it's starting to match up fairly well. Alright, so once you got that finished up, you can now take that back to a texture. So let's do that on the shaft where it's a little bit more complete. So on the shaft right now it's a poly paint, and we need to actually start to save some of these things out as textures to be able to use back in Maya. So to do that, we just need to use one of these buttons over here, this color to texture. Okay, we can either just hit this, that'll create a texture based on the UVs, and the default here that we've got is 1024. You could also go ahead and create a new texture. So go to Texture and create a new texture at whatever size that you want. Okay, and then create your color to texture. Okay, and then you've got a texture map out here. What you want to do before exporting this is to actually flip this in the V and then export this out. And then you can export whatever file that you want to export and be able to bring that into Maya. Alright, so once we start getting into bring our maps into Maya, that's what we're going to do as far as exporting these out of ZBrush to get those in. So just keep that in mind. Right now we just have poly paints going on here. We need to be able to export those. Okay, so beyond saving out our texture maps, which we just looked at, we also need to output some sort of map to tell Maya how we want the sculpted detail to look. And in this case we can use normal maps to do that. Those are going to be based on the UVs as well, but it's going to be a little bit different process than saving out texture maps. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up painting the handle, and then in the next lesson we'll go ahead and look at how we can output normal maps for some of these pieces. So we'll go ahead and do that next.